Hey Dan, can you hear me?
Hey Greg, yeah, you got me.
Yes, I do.
Perfect.
How are you doing?
I'm very good. How are you?
I'm good,
Good
I'm
to
good,
meet
I'm
you.
good.
Good to meet you last. I've been following you for quite a while, so it's always good to meet somebody that you see through the screen, and you get this idea of who they are and what they're about, but until you meet them,
Yeah,
you don't
ex-
know.
exactly. I mean, it's nevertheless it's until Zoom, but better than not seeing each
Yeah,
other, right? Um,
absolutely.
yeah, I mean, I was very impressed with your the last project. So where you reached out and like kind of collected the sandbag workouts from a couple of coaches. I was really impressed by that project. But let's talk about that later.
Hmm.
Um, so let's start with the organizational stuff. So what's your name? Where are you coaching? What's your background?
Yeah, well, my name's Dan Spinks. I'm in Swansea, Wales, in the UK. I co-own Outcast Strength and Fitness. I've owned that for the last coming up to 12, 13 years.
Oh wow.
So yeah, I've been doing it for a while. We were originally the first CrossFit gym in Wales, I think about the 10th in the country,
Mm-hmm.
which was, I think it started back in 2007. I started as a member. I think like a lot of coaches end up, they start as a member and then kind of work their way up, started helping out a little bit. I'm a graphic designer by trade. So I
Ah,
redid
I
the
got you on this
logo
one
and
because I always fancied your nice little graphics out there. So I guess that was you.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So that's something I've always been a creative person, and I try and kind of combine that. I was never a gym person at all. My background was skateboarding. I still do it a little bit, since an early age. Gymnastics at a very early age, martial arts, skateboarding, and I just loved how something like skateboarding was such a creative and physical thing, and there was no real reason for skateboarding other than you just love to do it.
Mm-hmm.
There was no that you had miniature goals within that. No, there was always tricks to learn, but it was just doing something that was difficult, that was hard, that you're never gonna complete. You
Mm-hmm.
just gradually, bit by bit, get better, more comfortable at. So I try over the years. I try to kind of bring that ethic into my coaching, into our gym. Myself and my co-owner, who's skateboarded himself a bit as well. So we're both of the same, cut from the same cloth, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I've always find a battle between the sort of meatheady gym stuff and then the sort of anti meathead gym stuff, and I'm kind of both. I try to sit in both. I always try and look at things from various angles. I always try and look at things as nothing's right, nothing's wrong. It's context. It's individual independent, group dynamic independent.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it just makes it a bit more interesting rather than just coaching exercises and movements.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's a limit to that, to the
Yeah,
enjoyment you and your clients can get out of that.
I mean, I could tell just through your posts and the stuff you did with Bagwad, etc. Like, I just wanted to get the person behind all that great stuff that you're doing and get your approach and so on. But I think you kind of see like at first hand when you observe people, when you watch what they're doing, like this is not normal stuff that you're doing, and
Mm-hmm.
this is my go sign. It's like okay, I like that person already because he has a different approach to. Well, let's say 99% of all the fitness world out there. And so that's already very enticing to me. Talk to me about the development in throughout the last 10, 12 years, like when you started with the gym, like typically
Yeah.
CrossFit gym, I guess, if you've been one of the first in the UK. So what was that transition? What was that period all about?
I think anybody who got into CrossFit early on. I mean, we were early adopters from the UK perspective, but not from a global perspective because it'd been going on in the US for quite a while. Um, with my background of gymnastics up to a like early teen competitive level, so I was okay at gymnastics. And as you more than like most people who get a certain level of gymnastics tend to be able to pick up other physical things quite quickly, just because of the confidence they have in movement. So I came across, it was after, I think a lot of people found CrossFit like me watching the film 300. Remember that film 300?
Yeah.
Gerard Butler and all that.
I remember. I immediately Googled which gym trains the actors, right?
Exactly. That's exactly what I did.
And I think it was Jim Jones, right? Back in the days.
Yeah.
Jim Jones.
Yeah. Can you remember their old website, the black and white website?
Beautiful.
Really sparse. And it just, you saw it. And I was the second I saw it, I was intrigued.
Yeah.
I was like, what the heck? Because they gave you nothing.
Yeah.
All it was photos. I don't think there were even any videos. I think it was just photos and quotes. And it was just people just obviously working super hard, but you didn't really know what they were doing.
I mean, I remember seeing some, was it already YouTube, whatever, seeing some videos of them training the actors and like tires and sledgehammers and bags and ropes and whatnot. So I think it was so intriguing because functional fitness back then in like, let's call it Middle Europe was not very popular back then. And you saw those like ripped bodies and like jacked people. And I was like, oh my God, what are they doing? I mean, CGI is one thing, but those people, like they trained hard.
Yeah.
And I remember whenever I think about Jim Jones, I think about, he described his favorite movements with single movement mind fucks. Right? So he said like, okay, today it's like 1,000 kettlebell swings. Today is, I don't know, like 5K all out row. And that kind of reminded me about the early CrossFit days, like literally, where the workout was like 3x3 deadlifts, and that was it. Or 5K run, or I don't know, 5x5 pull-ups, and that was it. That was everything for the day. So that was kind of intriguing. Okay, so Jim Jones was a major contributor to your development.
Yeah, it was. And I think back then as well, that if you wanted to know anything more, you had to pay a membership for the website. Because a friend of mine told me about it, and I looked at it and I saw the website. God, that looks, I'm kind of intrigued. I don't know if I want to do it or not, but I'm kind of intrigued by this. And I was Googling, I didn't know what to look for. I didn't know what CrossFit was. I didn't know any of this. I'd never really, I think I'd been to the gym about 3 or 4 times in my lifetime up before that. I remember the first time I went to the gym with a friend of mine who was a bit of a meathead. And we just went into a local spit and sawdust, free weights only gym. And I just did a session with him. No idea what I was doing. It was about an 1.5-hour session and I couldn't move for like a week and a half. I was just like, why do people want to do this? This is awful. So that kind of put me off that type of training. And I'd never thought of training. To me, I've always been active. I was the sort of kid who was hardly in the house. I was out skateboarding all the time, climbing trees, all that sort of stuff. So really active all the time. So then I think I was coming what I was Googling. And then I came across at that time, that was the gym CrossFit Swansea. Mm-hmm. And so I clicked on it. And again, websites in that period of time weren't great. So it just said, come along, watch the session and take it from there. So I turned up. There was about 6 guys in the class. They were subletting with a jiu-jitsu gym. So it was barefoot, no equipment there whatsoever. It was just mats. They were doing some bodyweight workout. I just said, I'm just come here to watch. And the guy just said, come and join in. And I was terrified of that. I was like, no, I'm fine. I'll just watch. So watched. Went to the first session then. I remember the first session I ever did. And I think most people will probably remember their first ever session for the rest of their life. And it was 10 minutes, Indy. 5 pull-ups, 10 press-ups, 15 squats, 10 minutes. I could do pull-ups. I thought, yeah, okay, I'll do that. And I think I got about 4 minutes in and just fell apart. And just like, what the hell is going on here? Why can't I do this? I got a reasonable level of gymnastics, and I'm so tired after 4 minutes that I can't do anything else. And that kind of, it was a combination of frustration. Why can't I do this? And just, well, I want to be able to do this. So in order for me to be able to do this, I need to keep doing this. And I think that was literally it. And it wasn't like I loved it. I just felt like it was something that, like, I don't want it to beat me. Yeah. I can't turn up to something like this, not do very well, and then just leave. That's not.
Yeah, I think CrossFit back in the days was the perfect combination between, it was enticing because people were really cool. It was heartbreaking because you realized that you suck at whatever, like weightlifting, gymnastics, strength, whatever. And you realized in like the first 5 minutes. So you had that great mix of, okay, I actually like it, but I suck so much at it. Okay, maybe I should invest more time in it. I think it's a perfect combination for starting to learn.
Yeah, and I think that, and I think, and it's not a problem, but back then it attracted the sort of people that would want to do it. But now, I mean, now we did, when I ended up taking over the gym then in 2012, the original owners left and I took over the gym. Before then, our intro session for anybody who wanted to come and try CrossFit was they did Cindy.
Oh my God.
20 minutes, a 20-minute workout.
20 minutes.
Whether they could do a pull-up or not, we scaled it. We said, we did the classic, well, if you can't do pull-ups, do jumping pull-ups.
Yeah.
If you can't do press-ups, do press-ups on your knees.
Yeah.
Forgetting that, the mindset I was in, I was always very active, very physical. All the members at the gym there were very physical. And you forgot that there's a huge percentage of people out there who just aren't.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what they need, So it was whole trial by fire. And I remember specifically, we had 2 new guys. The coach at the time was taking them on their 20-minute Cindy. I was taking the session, finished, went over, looked on the board, and they had 2 like 11 rounds down. I went, holy shit, that's 11 rounds on your first ever Cindy. That's amazing. And then the coach was like, that's not 11, that's 2.
Oh,
it was 2 lines. And
yeah.
I was like, oh, right, okay. And that something clicked then of like, all right, this isn't probably the best thing to do. It weeds out what you consider to be the weak, but surely the weak are some of the people that need this more. Those who are already really active and will thrive on this stuff will come to it. They'll seek it out. But those people who really need this aren't going to seek it out because they don't know what to look for, and they've no idea what they're capable of. They might be coming to you with, and there's nothing worse than being in a new environment with new people and then given something that you can't do, but you're doing it for 20 minutes. It's soul destroying. Absolutely soul destroying.
I was about to say, this is probably the worst start you could have to something new.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, CrossFit back then was super fun. And you felt like you were part of this thing that was very underground, because I've always been attracted to that. I've always been attracted to, that's why skateboarding, I did a bit of graffiti and stuff when I was younger. So I was always attracted to these subcultures, these countercultures. And back then, that's what CrossFit felt like. It's grown into what it is now. And I don't think it's necessarily lost that. It's still there. But obviously with the games, there's that divide. And there's been conversations about this probably for the last 5 years or so, is the CrossFit Games is not CrossFit. The CrossFit Games is the CrossFit Games. It's the sport of it, and there's still that blur, that divide to the middle. I mean, we did end up disaffiliating in 2020 after all that, the Glasman and all that nonsense on Twitter. But it'd been a couple of years. Like as a gym owner now, I will always tip my hat to what CrossFit showed me and gave me. What we weren't on board with then was just more of the business side and the game side of CrossFit. And we were just like, people were coming to us and we were saying to them, oh, have you seen CrossFit online? And they'd be like, yeah. And we were starting to say things like, right, well, that's kind of what we do. Yeah. But that's not fully what we do. So once we started saying that, I was like, well, perhaps we're not that gym anymore. Yeah. And it's not a slight on CrossFit as a training methodology, because I still use a lot of the methods and the principles behind it. But as a business, we were just starting to move in a different direction, and a few years leading to that, HQ had made some certain decisions and done certain things, and we'd always go, well, that's not really us. So we kind of, then it was more like parted ways, just because the business side of things just wasn't working for us. Yeah. So then we just moved in a different direction slightly. Yeah.
I mean, I de-affiliated, I don't know, 2018, 2019, something like this, along those lines, maybe even earlier, 2017. CrossFit has done amazing stuff for getting people off the couch again, finally. I think they did a lot for a different picture of female athletes in particular. Like, it's okay to be strong, it's okay to be in an athletic shape, right? You don't have to suck on like salad all day and make sure you don't move so you don't burn calories, right? So it's done amazing. What I was always missing was nobody talked about it, right? You mentioned the games and you talked the training methodology. Nobody talked about it. Like nobody openly said, okay, this is the games. This is like, this is the NFL. This is Premier League soccer. This is like the top-notch product. And very few people should be training for this, right? Because of A, B, C, D. And this is the training methodology, and this is how we do it, or this is how we think people should do and train for, like, I don't know, 2 hours a week, 3 hours a week. This is how Soccer Mom and average shows should be training to get in a better shape, and that's it. And nobody openly talked about it. And my problem was, like, CrossFit started as probably the best or the only open source fitness methodology, right? Everybody contributed, everybody. A powerlifter, a runner, a weightlifter, a coach, a self-defense guy, a nutrition guy, like you name it. Like everybody contributed, and that's what attracted me. Like it's like I've never done a workout where I sprinted, lifted, and did a body weight movement. Like never, right? And I think that kind of faded away at some point, right? It was only about the top product. It was, from a sales perspective, it was very narrow-minded. That's at least my opinion, right? So what have you changed since 2020? When you de-affiliated, did you change anything in terms of programming, in terms of your coaching approach? Lead me through.
Yeah, I think we've been changing slowly without really realizing it. I did the CrossFit Strongman cert with Rob Orlando in 2014.
Mm-hmm.
And that for me was a bit of a light bulb moment. Whereas, the way Rob explains it, simple movements, large loads over long distances. And I started thinking, and the way he explained it, because you look at the strongman movements, if you've never done them before, as just outright dangerous. Picking up a lump of concrete and then dropping it back on the floor. Moving these super heavy weights that could crush your spine.
Mm-hmm.
You don't think they're accessible because of things like the strongman competitions. So I did that course, and I left there thinking, just thinking a little bit differently. Going, well, maybe what we're doing is almost there, but we're missing something. We're missing this moving loads because the conversation. And I understand in a class environment, it's difficult or can be difficult to have people moving around everywhere. It's easier to have them staying on one spot with a barbell or a kettlebell and just moving up and down and maybe forwards and backwards a little bit. It's simple to coach. It's easy to organize and it's safe, but great. And I'd rather see people doing that than not doing anything at all.
Mm-hmm.
But we're, humans, we're designed to move more than that. We're designed to move more than just up and down. We've got 2 legs, we've got 2 arms, we can move sideways, forwards, backwards. And that was one of the things that felt that was missing, but it only shone a light on it after doing the course, because we did so many farmers carries, yoke carries, and it was wrecking me. It was absolutely smashing me. But I did my first yoke carry and farmers carries in that course and was like, holy crap, I've done this for 60 seconds and I'm done.
Mm-hmm.
Like this is something that feels totally different. So I think I started introducing strongman, the carries more than anything to start with. And then I think I came across Julian and the StrongFit stuff in about 2016, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And we've been trying to find a good sandbag, and I couldn't find a good sandbag. They kept ripping, they kept falling apart. And then I found the StrongFit website through the podcast when he was with them, with Armin Hammer and all those. So found his website, and he was just posting his videos with Val Voberl and training. He was posting daily workouts, and then noticed he did his video on sandbags and messaged him, and he said, yeah, he sells them. And I bought one of them. I think it was a 60 or 70 kilo bag. Mm-hmm. So filled it up, like he said, and it was like amazing. This is the first bag that isn't ripping after 2 weeks, feels solid. You can pick it, throw it, carry it. And I think from then on was like, well, we can do almost anything we can do with a barbell, almost anything with this. Not that I don't like barbells. It's just a tool. It's what do you want out of your training? I would argue the majority of people don't need to worry about using a barbell yet. They just need to get strong, as not necessarily as quickly as possible, as soon as possible. I don't want to have to spend 6 months teaching someone a specific technique in order for them to get strong. I want them to get strong as soon as they walk through the door. And once you build that strength, that structural strength with the bags and the carries and things like that, then all the other stuff just becomes so much easier for both, for coaches and for individuals. They've got the confidence. So I think since 2020, we'd already changed. We'd already changed what we do and how we do it. So when we disaffiliated, it was kind of like, well, nothing's any different now, because we've been doing this for the last 4 or 5 years. You know, and we ended up hosting Rob at the gym for I think 2 years in a row. We had him do the seminar there, so a lot of people, and it was nice to see other people have those light bulb moments that I had. You know, because I just went down and videoed the seminars while he was running them. But just seeing other people's eyes, kind of like, holy crap, you know, this yoke thing is great. And stones, all right, stones are a bit trickier, so you got to make them, etc. But bags do more or less the same thing. We still got the stone, we use them occasionally, but yeah, you just see people's faces. I had I do a strongman session every Friday, and we had one of our members is I think 63-year-old lady, retired, had complete knee replacement about 2 years ago, and she picked up the, I think, 30-kilo stone, took it to her shoulder within about 4 attempts. You know, and all I'm showing her is how to stand. She does the rest. I'm not having to teach her, right, I want you to brace here, I want you to twist here, I want you to hold this. She just picked it up like she should. And I was like, this is what most people should be doing, in my opinion. You know, and that's something I was going to bring up about, you know, the future of these sort of gyms. And I think simple fitness should be at the core of most of them, so that you're not having to coach people for months and months and months and months until you even think about loading them. Because I don't know what you think, but I used to think the squat was the hardest thing to teach with a barbell, and now I'm like, the hinge is definitely the hardest thing to teach for me, because, you know, some people's just totally unaware of how their body moves in space. And I notice people who are really mobile, particularly in the knees and ankles, have trouble moving at the hip because they only move at their knees and ankles. It's just something I've seen over the last probably 4 or 5 years. And, you know, I spent hours searching online. What's the best video for coaching the hinge? What's the best video for coaching the deadlift? What's the best video, you know, learning as much as possible. And they all teach the same thing, more or less. And it was only through watching Julian and the Strong Fit stuff and doing the seminar. I did the seminar online during lockdown, that you just look at it a different way. It just makes you coach it a different way, because it's all about them. It's not about you trying to teach them an exercise. It's about you trying to teach them awareness, so that they can then learn the movement themselves. So I think that's the difference in how I coach and how we coach now. It's less about coaching them an exercise, and it's more about teaching them awareness of their own body and what they can do with it. And that's difficult. You know, it takes a long time. It's taken me a long time to get my head around that. I don't know how it was for you when you first started doing it.
So if I had to pick one movement to change the world, it would be definitely the hinge, because I think most people would benefit 100% from just learning how to properly hinge, right? Because just freeing the hips, using the hips, like all the muscles that are attached to it, you have to brace, you have to use your obliques, etc. Like the hinge per se, I think it's the most not underused, but under-coached, properly under-coached movement out there. So I was running into the same issues, right? So after all the seminars and the time I've spent with StrongFit and Julian, like my thing was always, I'm not the most theoretical guy, right? I love learning, I love teaching, but my thing is, like, what I thrive on is, how can I make it as simple as possible for people to understand what I want from them, right? And for me, this means, like, my journey throughout the next 50 years is, how can I make the hinge easier to understand and to learn for like the 99% of people out there. My job is not to produce 250 kilo back squat powerlifting guys, right? Because that's not what I'm good at. I can move weight. I'm decently strong, but my passion is, how can I teach my mom or like average Joe out there how to hinge properly, how to pull properly, how to press, how to et cetera, et cetera. So what we've developed over the last 5 years is, we call it the fine stress use principle, right? So what I was missing when understanding the hinge is, okay, I understand which muscles are involved now. I understand what's a movement pattern, what's the difference between a movement pattern and an exercise, but how do I transfer that? So we're breaking it down. We're literally having like find exercises for every single muscle that's involved in a hinge. So for the inside hamstring, for the glutes, we stress it with the movement pattern, and then we're gonna implement it in an exercise, right? And the art of producing that process over and over again, we just got like faster and faster in teaching the hinge. But not only the movement pattern, but people got stronger in that process. People learned about, okay, this is a muscle, this is how it should feel. And it's not that separated concept of, okay, this is the movement pattern, those muscles should be involved, and I'm going to try to do the hinge with whatever, stiff leg deadlifting for the next 3 months, every single day for 20 minutes until I get it. I think there's a step before that, at least that's what I've experienced in my gym, is, how can I say this politely? People have a very short attention span, right? So that means you can, because I was about to become the hinging CrossFit coach, because I knew so much about the hinge, so I wanted to blur everything out at the same time. Okay, this is, you have to rotate here, and you have to engage here, and then you have to do this, and then you have to grab the barbell and keep the pecs engaged, and everything was right, but it was just too much for people. So we're literally, like, when people start, we're breaking it down and I'm I'm one of the most chaotic person when it comes to organizing stuff. And that's why I've chosen a very rigid step-by-step process how to teach people hinge, right? So that means, okay, this is session 1. Those are the muscles you're going to need. And we're going to pick one, focus on that single muscle, try to activate it, try to stress it, and use it in an exercise in the same session, right? Done deal. So it's 5 minutes, maybe 3 minutes of theoretical work and 57 minutes of actual practical work. And the next time we're gonna use a different muscle. And then we're gonna use the third muscle and the fourth. And then all of a sudden, over 4, 6, 8, 12 weeks, people are starting to understand that concept. That this is how it needs to feel, rather than this is, I know now which muscles to use in the hinge, but I really don't know how to activate them. So we've spent hours, months, weeks, years on finding out, okay, which activation exercises works best. It feels like training. It's not physio exercise. It feels like training. People don't have a clue if we're in the fine stress or use phase, so to speak, in that hour. So it's perfect. But we have, like, I can give that playbook to a coach and be like, okay, this is your first year of coaching. Right? I'm not saying you should stay there for the rest of your life, but if you're going to follow my rules and my approach and my exercises and my blah, 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 you're going to become a better coach. You're going to understand how the hinge will work, and then you can do whatever you want with that. If you want to stick with it, you'll improve the hinge from so many people. If you want to develop your own thing, that's fine. But I think people, coaches, gym owners, whoever, need to have the package first, so to have some sort of security in their head, right? I personally don't need that. I'm an exploring guy, right? I don't need that strategic and strict approach, but most people do. Let's be honest, right? That's how most people learn. That's what they learn in school. I learned this by heart. So we kind of give them a little bit of wiggle room in that. And at some point we'll introduce, okay, now you've learned all the muscles. Now you know how to activate them. And now it's on you to develop the system further. So we give them rules, we give them exercises, because I think that's not out there yet, at least not that I know of. So that's my approach. It works really well. I gotta admit, it took me probably 3 years to realize I should do this with my coaches. So I started blurring everything out in coaches' meetings. Okay, this is the hinge. We're going to go through it. And I expected them a week later, they should be perfectly hinging, because I told them everything I had. And once I realized, okay, they're doing the same mistakes that I did. They're doing the same overthinking and underdoing. It's like, okay, I gotta change that approach. This is not working. Right. So go ahead.
Yeah. I think that's the thing, because whenever you do a coaching seminar, workshop, qualification, whatever it is, you always leave that super pumped and super excited. I've learned loads of stuff in this 2 days, 1 day, whatever it is. Let's get it moving. But really, I can't remember who I listened to. It might have been John Wellborn, where he talked about seminars and workshops and how to get the most out of each one. Because I think one of the best things I found during the lockdown with the pandemic is a lot of these people that I wanted to learn from but couldn't, or not couldn't, but the traveling, the money was out of my range at that present time. All had to put their stuff online, which was brilliant. All this stuff that was fairly inaccessible was suddenly accessible, and that's why I did a bunch of the Strong Fit stuff. I did the Find Your Damn Muscles with Richard, the anxiety course with Richard, so all this stuff. I did the Kelly Starrett's 1 and 2 mobility one, which is second one was really good because that was with Kelly as well. And I know that all of these, the best coaches in the world, all disagree with each other on something, but the best coaches are fine with that. I don't agree with you on this, but I agree with you on this, this, and this. And I think too much time what the internet does is it wants to pit people against each other. Kelly Starrett said this and it's wrong. He said, well, it's context dependent. What does that individual want to get out of it? I found a really good post. I found a really good post this morning from a guy. I think I just posted it on my stories. From a guy at Physical Preparedness Group. Don't ask if you're doing the exercises right or wrong. Don't ask if you're doing the exercises right or wrong. Ask if it's getting you the results you're looking for. And I really like that because that's basically what Julian says, what you do, what a lot of the people within. I think what the Strong Fit thing did was attract a lot of people who had more questions that weren't getting answered.
Yeah.
Or they might have had questions and they didn't even realize there was an answer. And there might not be an answer. It's consistent. Things change all the time. What I do now compared to what I did 10 years ago is very different.
Oh, yes.
I think you'd agree. Some of the stuff you probably did in the early days, you're like, oh my God, what was I doing? Why on earth was I getting them to do that? I was too concerned with the numbers. If someone's deadlift's getting heavier, they're getting stronger. Arguably, yes, they are getting stronger, but are they getting technically stronger or are they getting physically stronger? Because if they're just learning to use leverage more, they're going to lift more weight. And once you start getting into that 1 rep max territory, that's when it starts getting tricky and potential issues occur, because it then becomes just about the number on the bar over everything else. If this number isn't going up, I'm not getting stronger. Well, it's going to stop at some point. Nobody keeps getting stronger forever. If that was the case, you'd have people doing 1,000-kilo deadlifts. We've got a finite amount of strength available to us to use safely, and each individual, how willing are you to go down that route? Do you want to get as strong as you possibly can, or do you want to get as strong as you need to be for what you want to do? And I think that's where people get the lines blurred. It just becomes about, if I've got a 250-kilo deadlift, I'm a strong guy, and I'm going to tell everybody I got a 250-kilo deadlift. Okay, but I've had guys at the gym. We had a guy a couple of years ago who had a 170, 180 back squat, and he had trouble doing unweighted lunges because he had zero stability at all. Stick that weight on his back and he's rock solid. You'd put him on one leg and he'd literally do 3 or 4 lunges and look like he was going to fall over. And I was like, oh, that shouldn't be happening. So I think that's where looking, observing, watching when someone's moving, and not just looking at the exercise, like how are they performing this, like what else is going on? What are their eyes doing? Where are they looking? What's moving first? What's not working very hard? What's all these little things, but people talk about the coach's eye, and that's kind of one of the most important things I think for coaches to learn it's just to watch as many people as you can, watch online, watch your members, watch people walking, watch people standing, because you start to see these patterns emerge, and you can start to put together your own kind of principles of what can you do about it. Do you need to do anything about it? It's a constant juggle.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like, I see my job as a gym owner and coach in presenting answers to questions that you have not asked yet. That means No, but I'm serious. Like because there's a lot of stuff going in people's head. Like even your not being able to do a lunge guy, he probably had that moment before when he did a lunge and he felt like super wobbly and unstable, but he couldn't articulate the question because he thought, like, okay, I just suck at lunges, or this is the way lunges should be. So I think as coaches, we should talk about stuff that's not being talked about, present answers there's no actual questions for, so people can start thinking on their own. It's like, wait, he's talking about a problem that I had, but we never talked about it, right? It's always the same 3, 4, 5 things. Like people are either plateauing, you have an injury, like a nagging injury, you don't lose weight, you don't gain muscles. It's always the same stories, right? And nobody's openly talking about it because everybody's assuming, okay, this is how I should train. I should do more cardio to burn more fat when I want to lose fat. If I want to get strong, I have to lift more weight, right? And then sport-specific science jumps in. It's like, okay, this is the rep range you should do for whatever, muscle endurance, muscle capacity, etc. And I would respect that if it would be working for normal people. Most of that stuff works perfectly for top athletes. And I was fortunate enough to see that with my own eyes with Olympic athletes that I trained. Is this stuff is always working, but only for the top 1%, right? Mm-hmm. And maybe it's working because they are the top 1%. This is just my opinion. This is my approach. And I've seen like tremendous athletes, like you talking about athletic endeavors, like jumping like 5 meters high and snatching 110 kilos. He was a snowboarder. Like those people are like, their genetics are like, you have to be an athlete. There's no way around it. And I would argue those guys could do a lot of bullshit and still thrive. You know what I mean? But most of that stuff is not working for normal people, like those rep range thingies and cardio zones. Like it's kind of working, but it's not picture perfect. Like not everybody is improving their plateaus. Not everybody is getting rid of their nagging shoulder issues. Not everybody is losing fat. Not everybody is gaining muscle. So there's got to be something that's should be filling that void. That's just my impression.
Yeah, and I think what Julian put me onto as well, which is kind of it's probably been the biggest shift in the last 2 years, is the central nervous system stuff. You know, a lot of it I still don't understand. You know, I'm not the most cerebral person. You know, I like to keep things as simple as they need to be, but no simpler. So when he started talking about that, I've got a background. I had terrible anxiety from an early age up until probably late 30s, early 40s. And I'd been on all the drugs under the sun, anything the doctor could throw at me, did cognitive behavioral therapy, and just nothing seemed to dent it at all. Listening to Julian and talking about the nervous system stuff led me then to the breath work, which led me to following Brian McKenzie, doing his course, reading the James Nestor book, and really getting into the breath side of things. But only the breath side of the things I thought that would help. I'm not a meditative person. Like my meditation to me is some sort of movement, be that slow, fast, whatever I need to do to depending on the state I'm in. You know, and I tell you what, that had a huge impact on me when I did the function of anxiety course with Richard. One of the homeworks we had to do was sled push as hard as heavy as you can. I think it was like 20 meters, 15 or 20 meters, and then backwards drag 15 or 20 meters. But you said the idea was to absolutely exhaust your energy levels, like completely zap you out so you can't do anything. True 100% intensity. Because as we all know, if I don't care how good you are at barbell cycling, you cannot reach levels of intensity with a barbell that you could with a sled, for example, because the technique will stop you at some point. No matter how good you are at squatting, how good you are at pressing, there's going to be something that slows you down. So I did that exact thing, did it twice, and the pain in my legs for about 15 minutes after was like nothing I'd ever felt before. There was my co-owner was with me, and I said to him, if I start to slow down pushing this sled, I want you to scream at me to stop. Like, do not let me stop, because he's good at that. You know, he will get right in your face. And I said, I know I'm going to need that. So he did. And I was on the verge. It sounds a bit melodramatic, but I thought at one point, something's going wrong with my legs. I think I might need to go to the hospital after this, because the lactic acid burn in my legs was like nothing I'd ever experienced. And it lasted about 15 minutes. Anyway, those 15 minutes died, and I felt fine about an hour later. I remember doing that on a Friday, and for the Saturday and the Sunday, I've never felt so calm. I can never remember feeling that calm. And the way that Richard explained it, and now what I know now through doing, reading, etc. myself, is, what that anxiety is inside you. Think of it like a volcano. If that volcano doesn't erupt, that energy is going nowhere. That energy is staying inside. Whether you and the whole thing about breathing to calm yourself down, very useful. I've used it numerous times. But once you've calmed down, like I said, that energy hasn't gone anywhere. It's just hidden. It's going to come back at some point. So that maybe suddenly go, holy shit. Well, maybe everybody needs to do a session like this at least once a week, where you are stripping it down to the simplest, like, what can you not do wrong? You can't injure yourself in the slightest, but will just push you to your absolute limit. So I try and do a session like that. That scared me, that session, because I felt so bad afterwards. But I felt so so bad afterwards initially, but felt so good for the next 2 days. It was like, oh, there's something in this, So that changed my mind to the right, calm everything down. Whereas, right, calm everything down in that moment, great, but then you need to do something to get rid of that at some point. Have you seen those videos of the animals convulsing after chasing their prey? There's 2 really good videos on YouTube, one of a polar bear, one of a lion, where they chase their prey, they don't catch it, and then they drop to the floor and look like they're having a fit. And apparently it's quite common in the animal world with predators that it's just releasing the energy that they would have used had they caught the animal. And because they didn't, it's just a way for them to release that energy. It looks quite scary, but then after a few minutes, the animal gets up and walks off. It's just a way for it to get rid of that energy. And that was like what that sled push felt like to me. So now it's almost like I'm not anti-barbell, I'm not anti anything like that. It's like, whoever I'm working with, do they need this? Do they need to use a deadlift for a barbell? Do they need to use a deadlift for a squat? Do they need to learn a clean? If they want to learn a clean and they're adamant and they're like, because it is fun, it is fun learning these things. And it's getting that balance of what's useful, what's fun, like how close can we get those to each other? Because I remember when you did I think it's on the online seminar when you talked about when you first started using sandbags, and you just binned off the barbells and just everybody used sandbags. Yeah, I see you smiling there, saying that was the absolutely wrong thing to do. Yeah, and that's kind of what I did a little bit initially, but I didn't push it on people. I was just like, sandbags are better, sandbags are better, sandbags are better. And it's like, well, now I'm like, well, that's entirely dependent on what your goals are. Or sorry, what your needs are. Needs versus wants versus goals. Because we've all got goals. They might be movement goals, they might be weight goals, but that's not what you want. That's just a small part of it. And also what you want isn't always what you need. So that's the tricky thing I find, is trying to get the people you're working with honest enough to say what they really want, then say, right, you're telling me that's what you want. Let's now work out if that's what you need. Okay, because they might not be the same thing. But I also do not want to be the person to say to somebody, no, you can't do that. Say, okay, that's one of your movement goals. Let's work out a way to get there. But on the way, let's look at your wants, let's look at your needs, because all the movement stuff, they're just exercises. They're just exercises on a timeline. And if you really want them or you really want to get them, then let's just work through them on the timeline. But let's not focus specifically on that being the thing that you want, because if you're honest, it isn't. And I think that's the difficulty. Most people won't admit it. Most people aren't willing to be vulnerable enough to say, yeah, this is actually what I want. And if someone says lose weight, it's like, okay, why do you want to lose weight? What's that for? What's the end game for that?
Yeah.
And that's those difficult questions, which I was never very good at asking. I'm getting a lot better at asking now, and I feel now as I'm getting older, I haven't got the time to kind of tiptoe around people, making them feel good for the sake of making them feel good. You know, I want them to work hard. And I think that's another thing that we kind of alluded to is people, a lot of people will hide behind technique, especially with a barbell. They'll go light because the answer will be, oh, I'm trying to improve my technique. I'm trying to make my technique perfect. Great, brilliant. But this is a high intensity workout. And if this is high intensity workout, we want you to go at high intensity. And if there's a deadlift in the workout and their technique isn't good enough to do a deadlift, I'll say, right, get on the sled. You're pushing a heavy sled. You've got to push something heavy. You've got to make it high intensity, as opposed to kind of always saying, oh, well, I'm going light because I don't, you know, I want to get my technique good. People do tend to hide. I was one of those people for a long time, you know, sticking at the same weight because I'm comfortable with that weight and not pushing my abilities, you know. And I think that's the thing with, we need to stress people as much as they need to be stressed, no more, no less, because we have to sit in that kind of area of we have to stress the system in order for something to change. If we're not stressing the system, and that doesn't necessarily have to be a heavy weight. There's numerous ways, as you know, you can stress people, and the way you get stressed in an exercise will probably be slightly different to the way I get stressed. So we don't want to break it down to too small, to the minutiae of the movement. We want to simplify it so that everybody in a class environment will get the stimulus of the workout, but you may not all be doing the same movement. You know, and I think it's getting the confidence to do that, to be in a class of various age groups, various abilities, and not just saying, well, go lighter on this or do less reps. That's an option, but is that going to really get them, is that going to stress them out enough for them to be able to keep moving forwards?
Yeah, you're right. That's one of the main questions that every gym owner, coach should ask is, how can I get the most out of the session, the class, the people? Because it's, as you said, there's different age groups, there's different levels of fitness, levels of technique, etc. But at the end of the day is, how can I elicit as much intensity and as much, let's call it, self-management as possible. So what do I mean by this? I think there's a couple of hats that needs to be distributed. The first one's on the gym owner itself. Like, you have to create a culture in your gym where people start talking openly about stuff, and that starts with us as gym owners. That goes back to the coach. That goes back to every single member. So people are starting or are beginning to feel more comfortable to talk about, okay, this didn't feel good, or I should have done this, or I have a question, right? You know, I've been to a couple of gyms around the world, and people are not asking questions. It's like, what are you paying for? For renting the equipment, or for access to the gym, or for the shower? Like that's what you should pay a lot of money for, is you have somebody to ask a question and you get a decent answer for it. Or sometimes you get no answer, but you get like 3 different tiers that you can try. So that's the first one. That's on the gym owner, creating that culture. On the coach is, okay, what's the goal of the session? We call it the MF of the day. It's not motherfucker. It's muscle focus of the day. So people are starting to realize, okay, this is a muscle focus day. This is whatever, the glute max, the teres major, the pec major. This is the muscle focus of the day. So we'll activate it. And the only thing we're going to coach throughout the session, no matter what the exercise is, okay, you want to try and activate those pecs when you deadlift. You want to try and activate those pecs when you do whatever, wall ball shots, or when you sprint, or whatever you want to talk. So people are trying to understand the concept of, okay, this is one step at a time, one muscle at a time, we're going to implement it. And the next time we're going to talk about something else. The self-management part is, and you mentioned it with the burn the question, the kill yourself sled session, is, when do I need to do what? Like, okay, when do I have to gain energy, like produce energy, strength training? When do I have to manage my energy, which is more on the cardio side, right? I have a problem with authorities. So my coaching approach is, I'm not going to tell you, okay, you should do a sled now, or push harder, or you should go to oblivion, because what if Mary is not ready for it because of insecurity, because of issues I don't have any clue about. I just talk about my own experience. This is why I do it. This is a purpose. This is why you should be doing this. And I'm not judging you. If you go fast, you go fast. If not, you don't. And the next session will build on top of that, right? So you pushed whatever 10 kilos on the sled for 200 meters. How did that feel? Which muscles did you feel? How did you feel afterwards? So people are starting to get a sense of, okay, this is what I should be doing now. If we're doing 200 meter sled sprints, okay, it's an all out effort. How much weight is on that sled? I don't care. If you want to use an empty sled, that's totally fine for me. But I want you to start struggling at 150 meters, right? You can lie to me, but you cannot lie to yourself, right? You can pretend you're dying at 150. So I'm kind of checking the box like, okay, Peter is dying at 150 meters, but you can't lie to yourself. And that feeling will define, or that effort will define how you feel after the session. If you feel shitty, right? Or if you, I don't know, if something hurts or whatever. So I like to present people options. It's like, okay, this is what we want to see. This is how we can get there. And now go and figure it out, right? And build from session to session. And I mean, that takes a lot of time. That takes years, in my opinion.
It does. I mean, we changed. Do you know Kenny Kane? He used to run CrossFit Los Angeles, and he used to be on the podcast with Julian and a few others.
I do. I met him in Los Angeles. Yeah, he's a nice dude.
Well, he did his Barbell Shrugged podcast about his programming system, about using competition days, mental toughness days, and practice days, or training days, I think you called them. The majority of your sessions should be training. Once a week, you'll go competition, which is the time where you will, whether it's hammer yourself or you're chasing for fun, chasing the person in front of you or trying to stay in front of the person behind you, creating that atmosphere and that environment where it's about intensity. And then your mental toughness days would be either the longer workouts or something like the single movement mindfucks you mentioned earlier. I hate them. I hate single modality stuff. I don't know whether it's because of the anxiety I've had in the past, where if it's just me and one thing, it just crushes me. I'm better than I was, but I still hate it. It's my most disliked. A 5K row, 20 minutes on the bike, anything like that just messes with me, because it's just you and your brain, isn't it? There's nothing to think about. You're not thinking about technique necessarily. You're just moving.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense to you. It doesn't make sense to you to sit on a bike for 20 minutes doing nothing, because your mind, you're creative, like your mind wants to go like this route, and this is interesting, and now you have to focus on one thing for 20 minutes, and it's boring.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I'm not very good at being bored. I'm not. I joke sometimes that I've got exercise ADD, where I make things really simple. I do simple stuff, and then after 2 weeks, I'll be like, let's add something else to this. And I do it. And again, I'm not making like, I hate doing that, because if you get bored doing something, as long as you're changing it or adding something to it doesn't detract from why you're doing it, then it's fine. I tried to for a while, I stripped everything down. I think it was during the lockdown, because obviously gyms weren't open, had no equipment. What we did with our members is we bought every member just a 25 kilo bag of sand, and showed them how to tape it up, so everyone's got a 25 kilo bag of sand at home, and worked out very quickly. When I wrote that Sandbag 101 program during lockdown, it was like, what can you do with a 25 kilo bag that's going to help people who are already strong stay strong and potentially get stronger with a weight that isn't necessarily very heavy. So it was like, okay, let's look at tempo work, let's look at isometric holds, let's look at all these sort of things. So then I kind of went too far the other way of doing as little as possible for the most amount of gains, which is great when it works, but it kind of gets boring. So when I kind of throw back to my days of skateboarding and what kept me doing it and why I love doing it so much, was there's always a constant progression, potential for progression. And it's also just being in that tribe of people, and I think that's what attracted me initially to CrossFit, is it didn't feel like I was training. It didn't feel like a gym. It felt like I was with a tribe of people who were all kind of aiming in the same direction, and that's what that felt like. It feels the same now, but different, because like the people in your classes now will be very different, a lot more varied age groups, like movement abilities, injuries. Whereas back in the early days of CrossFit, it was just like, well, everyone just does this. Don't really, not that I don't care if you're injured or not, you always scale if possible, but it's just everyone's doing the same thing. Whereas we now know that everybody doing exactly the same thing doesn't won't work as well. It won't serve each individual member as well. So you also don't want to be spending all of your time individually writing every single person in that class their own program. You just need to be confident enough to say, right, well, you're not deadlifting, push the sled. Because if the aim is to get strong, pushing a sled is going to get someone strong. If I'm not concerned about teaching them, if they're never going to compete in powerlifting, do I need to teach them a deadlift? No. And that's another thing, a little bugbear. I don't like to complain about stuff necessarily, but a lot of physios I notice online have suddenly started coming onto, and the last couple of years, deadlifts. Everyone should deadlift. Everyone should deadlift. It's good for you. You need to learn to pick something off the floor safely. And I would argue that a barbell deadlift is not the same as picking something up off the floor. It's similar, but it's not the same. So if you're teaching someone how to deadlift with a perfectly neutral spine, bracing and everything's super useful, really important. And then they need to pick up their kid off the floor and they round their spine. If they're not training in that rounded spine position or situation, and they revert to this neutral or perceived neutral, safe position, they're probably more likely to hurt themselves. And they become terrified of bending their spine forwards, backwards, sideways. It just, because I did one of Stu McGill's back mechanic courses, which was brilliant. When they were very open to, like, we understand the spine moves and has to move. That's what it's designed to do. But the movements were taught in a very kind of rigid fashion. The hip hinge, you need to do this, this, and this in order for this to happen. And it's,
but did you? I mean, you're realizing it, but the topic is never about muscles. Never.
No.
It's always about joints. It's about bones. It's about rotation. It's about
it's about what it looks like,
positioning, right?
Yeah, and too many people. How many times will someone? And a good example, one of our members is hypermobile in their lower body, hips, knees, and ankles. Ridiculous, doesn't have to warm up, can basically put their bum on the floor. So if I asked them to squat and then asked somebody else, what do you think of that squat? They'd look at it and go, that's a great squat. It's technically a great squat, but I know if I load her up, if I put some load on, that changes completely because she has no strength in that position. So the fact that she can get in that position is great, but she can get in that position because she's hypermobile. So that's where context is everything. If I give her a bar or a kettlebell or a sandbag or whatever it is, the squat changes entirely. She can't stand up. She'll suddenly not squat as low. She'll go to like parallel. Her feet width will change because her body's having to do what it needs to do to handle the weight that's been given to her. So that kind of, when Julian first started talking about tension over position, it took me a while for me to get my head around what that really meant, because a lot of the early stuff Julian was talking about, I was drawn to it, but I didn't understand it.
Yeah, and what's the practical application of it? Like, what's the bridge between? Okay, I get it. It's not about joints. It's about engaging muscles. But what does that mean? So, you talked about the workshop before, about Rob Orlando's workshop, etc. So I tried a couple of workshops in different countries in Europe because I wanted to see if my approach in my gym with my coaches could work somewhere else as well. Right? Because I could have been in a one-way street. Okay, it's perfectly working because I'm there and I know those people and I work with them on a consistent basis, basically on a daily basis. And we made a challenge in the gym. So I talked to my coaches 4 years ago. It's like, okay, we'll take 1 year to work on that process. And our goal is that everybody should be able to deadlift in a workout without not more than a minute of explaining what we need to do in a deadlift, and nobody should feel the back the next day, right? So that's a huge task because people are attracted to deadlifting, and I get it. Like, I love deadlifting, right? So I think everybody should do it because I don't want to lose the opportunity of somebody being interested in the deadlift, of saying, okay, that dude is just going to give me a sandbag and I'm just going to lift it up. But it doesn't feel like I feel excluded from the group when I do sandbag deadlifts instead of barbell deadlifts, right? Mm-hmm. So we tested that approach. And now for us right now, at the stage that the gym is right now, it's the easiest thing to do a deadlift. It literally means grab a barbell, do this, we'll go through the muscles, people know what to do, and they just deadlift, right? So I think that the workshop that I'm currently under still work in progress, but I want to find out, okay, what's the practical application of, so what does that mean? What are you telling the physio that is telling you this is the position and this is what I want to do? Like what can he do to improve his clients, right? And that discussion normally ends because then we talk about, okay, you need to engage their muscles. Like, yes, but how are we going to do that? Like, what's the process behind it? What's a 12 months program to transform your gym from a typical CrossFit gym to a CrossFit gym that still does the same movement, but nobody gets hurt anymore? Like that's my goal of how to teach gyms how to do that. And I think a lot more people should know about this.
Yeah, and I think what you were just saying then about, injuries, there's always been that conversation probably for the last, 6 or 7 years about injuries within CrossFit and their studies and all this sort of thing. And I used to be one of those people who would look on Instagram or someone's page and be like, what are they doing? Are they going to hurt themselves? Why are they doing that like that? And again, context is everything. I've got no idea why they're doing that. I can guarantee if every workout I've ever done is videoed, a large percentage of them are going to look like trash, because everything I do is my choice. I'm before I was coaching, if I'm in a class, coach is telling me what to do or advising, we're doing this movement, this is how you do it, breaking it down like you do. But it's up to me how I then perform that. The coach's job is, if I'm being unsafe, is to flag it up, and do whatever they're going to do to help me. But if I'm deciding to, we enter a local competition, go to a CrossFit competition. And obviously you want to do as well as you can these competitions. So it's all about going fast, whatever that is. So I got various niggles. I mean, I didn't find CrossFit until I was 36. I was 36 and still thought I was 22. So I'm doing these workouts like I'm 20 years younger because it's fun.
Mm-hmm.
And the niggles and injuries I picked up, because through skateboarding, I got, God knows how many dislocated ankles, broken wrists, hips and knees aren't great. So all of the movements I've done and all the niggles that I have got and had over the years are all my fault. I would never blame CrossFit for the injuries I've got. I blame the way I did CrossFit.
Hell yeah.
I hate those conversations I see online of like, CrossFit's bad for you. No more than boxing, no more than bodybuilding, no more than rugby, no more than this. And that's why I think that those lines being blurred between the games and what CrossFit is as a methodology is more important, because people need to understand, if you're coming to the gym to get fit for your life, to get strong for your life, that there needs to be a certain amount of individuality within that. Just turning up for an hour a day, 4 to 5 days a week to do a workout, but outside of the gym, whatever's happening in the other 23 hours is going to have more impact, arguably, than your 1 hour in the gym. And I'm not necessarily talking about just their nutrition. I'm talking about their sleep, their stress, are you coming to the gym because everything outside sucks and this is your 1 hour where you enjoy your life? And those are the answers that need to be, those are the questions that need to be answered more, rather than this is the exercise we're doing, how fast can you do it? But it's difficult, because in that environment, if you got one coach and between 10 and 20 people in a class, it becomes a juggling act then, and we can always do better. As coaches, we can always do better. As coaches, we can always improve. But there's also a certain amount of that on the individual as well. We can't take it on all ourselves. If we've explained to somebody 100 times, this is what your squat should feel like, and that's what I was going to bring up, what you mentioned earlier about the one thing I say more than anything else in my classes is how does it feel? Not what does it look like? Not if they say to me, how was that? My first answer is, well, how did it feel? Immediately putting it on them, of them then having to kind of internalize and go, oh, actually, I'm not sure. Right, we'll do it again. What do you feel? That's probably the most powerful sentence you can use as a coach, for me personally, is getting the people to understand this is me doing this. So I should understand what I'm doing, what it feels like, because then I can ask those questions to myself. The coach is always there to guide them. But that's what I think the coach's job is, eventually make your individuals, whether it's group classes or individual people you're working with, make them truly independent. If you've still got people coming to you one-to-one for 10 years, unless you've just got a really good relationship and they love coming to you and hanging out with you and doing that, if they're still training with you 10 years later, I would argue you've done something wrong. The idea is for them to not need you anymore at that level. You know, it's not saying I want every single person I work with to leave me forever, but that's kind of the goal.
Yeah.
If the goal isn't for them just to work with you, the goal is to make them so good they don't need to work with you.
I would like to add a layer to the question, how does it feel? Because in my experience, people have a hard time answering it. Because how does it feel is like, what are we expecting as an answer? Like, I'm feeling it in that muscle, in that muscle. So so let's say we're doing kettlebell swings, right? We've gone through the movement. Everybody knows basically which muscle should be involved. And there's always some people that forget stuff, right? So they do a couple of reps and they complain about, okay, I feel my lower back rather than my hammies and my glutes. It's like, okay, then we'll walk up to them and be like, okay, so let's activate this. Okay, so I'm gonna feel this. Okay, and then it's on that person to fix their own problem. I'm not a teacher. I'm trying to remind people of what they've already learned. And I mean, reality is people forget stuff, and it's like, oh, okay, I should feel my hammy, I should feel my glutes on that part. And all of a sudden, people start doing kettlebell swings, and like 10 seconds, their lower back pain is gone. Right, so that's my goal of making them independent, but on a muscle basis, so they can judge or they can fix themselves by understanding, okay, this is the problem, this is what I should activate, and if they have no clue, and obviously that happens as well, okay, we're gonna remind them, we're gonna be like, okay, this is how it should feel because we've done that exercise, right? So with every single person in the gym, I have a couple of stories in my head of when we did activation and exercise. Like, can you remember when we did ABCD? Can you remember how it felt when you did the lat activation drill on the floor? It's like, oh, okay, when we did the jumping pull-ups, when we did the jumping dips, when we did like the glute bridges, that song is like, oh yeah, that fucking burned in my ass. It's like, okay, this is the feeling I want you to recreate right in that region. Okay, don't worry about how you grip the kettlebell. Don't worry about how the kettlebell is gonna end up. Like, just make sure on that portion of the kettlebell swing, on the concentric portion, on the way up, you're starting to swivel and use your hips. So that means your glute needs to burn, right? And as Arnie said, if you want to train a muscle, you got to think about it as well, right? So and that works perfectly. So this is always, and I think that's still the it's a solution. It's not the solution. It's a way of even bringing physios on board, bringing doctors on board. It's like, okay, this is not 5 exercises to activate the glutes. It's like, no. These are 5 ways, and this is a strategic step so people start activating it, using it. You stress the shit out of that muscle, and then you implement it in actual training, right? And most physios, because they're scared, because their job is to not hurt you, right? So that means not put a lot of stimulus on you, because that's what they learn, because it could go wrong, and they only see this person once a week. So in that case, we have such a huge opportunity as gym owners because we see them 3 hours a week, right? And that's 2 hours more than the physio does. So this is great. But I'm totally on the same page. Stuff is on people as well, but I'll blame myself if Sally cannot hinge correctly after 6 months of training with us.
Yeah, we've had that conversation with our coaching team as well. That if something doesn't seem to be working for an individual, like, we need to think, well, what is it? Is it them? Is it us? Or is it a combination of both?
Probably both.
What are we saying? Yeah, exactly. We can't just say, well, this person's not getting it, they're rubbish. If, however, they're the sort of personality who just chooses not to do it, because we've had plenty of members over the past who can move immaculately during the coaching part of it. As soon as the workout starts, they just want to go fast for the sake of it, like I did in the early days. It just becomes about the score. And some people, I find that's very difficult to train out of them, because that seems to be a part of their personality. It's deep in their personality, and they'll admit it themselves. They'll finish the workout, or you're coaching them through it and being like, come on, you know what you're doing. And they'll kind of roll their eyes and go, oh, I know. Like, they know they're doing it. It's almost like a tick. They can't help it.
Yeah, but everybody wants to get stronger. Everybody wants to get faster. Everybody wants to do more wobble shots. Everybody wants to move more weight on the back squat. So at some point, you have to have a hard conversation with those people and be like, okay, I get it. Like, it's human. I'm still in the same boat. But in order for you to get rid of your hip aches or increase your back squat or whatever, like, we need to dial that stuff in. Like, you need to work, even in the workout on your wall balls. Like, the only thing I want to focus you on is activating your pecs. And it's like, what the fuck? Like, it's a wall ball. It's a lower body exercise. Like, trust me, try it, and your wall ball will get, or your back squat will get better in the next 4 to 6 weeks. But I get it. It's hard.
Yeah. It's and like lately, I've been working more with one-to-ones recently, but the last probably 2 months or so.
Yeah.
And what I love about the one-to-ones is you can go deep on that stuff, but then you also miss that, the group dynamic.
Yeah.
So the idea is to work both, but the guy I'm working with, and that's what I think has changed my training a lot since finding the strong fit type stuff is, I do the bag wad stuff and that's great. And I love programming those and I love using sandbags, but lately I shifted a bit more to using the sled. Mm-hmm. I use the sled more now than anything else. And simply because, and I hate saying things like, well, I'm getting older, but as you get older, your training does need to change a little bit, somewhat. I don't deal well with volume, with high volume barbell, dumbbell movements. I don't deal well with it. Mm-hmm. I ache for days. I don't want to ache for 2 or 3 days afterwards. It's nice now and again to realize, I pushed myself to the point that I can do this. But the vast majority of my workouts now are sled-based, concentric only, heavy stuff combined with some lighter isometric stuff, so I can hit the smaller muscles. And that works brilliantly because I can do that every day. I do the sled every day for a minimum of 10 minutes. With that pushing, pulling, dragging, whatever. And I've learned the whole creative side of things. I've learned. I haven't invented exercises, but my God, you can do so much more with the sled than just push and pull. God, you can almost clean and press it. You can hit hamstrings. You can just through testing and trying things. So the vast majority of people I work with are all working. I'm working with a group of ladies who are post-cancer treatment. And again, the second they walk through the door, I can stress them safely with a weight that's going to challenge them. Mm-hmm. And they're both in their 50s, never really done any training in their life. And last week or week before last, they both pushed 200 kilos on the sled. And they were just like eyes wide going, I can't believe I did that. I can't believe I pushed 200 kilos. And I said, well, how else am I going to stress an individual and challenge their strength safely immediately as the second they walk through the door? So for me, my go-to at the minute is sled first, then sandbags, and then after the sandbags, okay, what do you want to do now? Where do you want to go? Do you want to try the dumbbells? Do you want to try the barbells? I want them to tell me. I don't want to be the person to say to them, right, now this is what you're doing. I want to be like, what do you want to do? Mm-hmm. Do you feel confident to try stuff? Let's try something. Let's challenge let's really challenge you now. So tell me what you're scared of. Tell me what movements you terrifies you. Let's try. Let's see. And I think because if we just focus on times, reps, they won't constantly get faster. They won't constantly get heavier. You're going to hit that plateau, that wall sooner or later. Are you happy with lifting the same weights and getting the same times forever? Because as soon as those times stop, what sort of person are you then? Mm-hmm. Are you the sort of person that's going to think, well, there must be more to this than just times on a board and weights on a bar? And again, I'm frustratingly very neutral because I know that that's fine as well. If that keeps you, if you keep training and you're happy to get the same times and the same weights for the rest of your life, but you're moving, God, that's 10 times better than not moving at all, or 100 times better than not moving at all. So I never want to knock anybody for going to a gym, whatever they're doing, because it's always, no matter what you're doing, it's better than doing nothing. But where are you, mentally, physically? That's when it comes down to the questions of what do you want.
Let me add a little bit to it. I think that is true, but I shoot a big but afterwards. So I think that is true, But you as a gym owner, you can decide what you want to see in your gym. Like, I'm totally fine with Peter being all on reps and weights and time and etc. Focusing exclusively on that, but not in my gym. Like, I'm totally fine. You can do whatever you want, but not in my gym. So I think it's very important for us gym owners to be very upfront with our message. Like, this is how we train in the gym. This is what we focus on. This is our process of improving. And if you're not up for it, I'm totally fine, but I don't think it makes sense for you to get a membership here, right? There's a million gyms out there which will be a way better fit, right? So we're not trying to press somebody into a box and be like, okay, because we know, like from an intro talk, we know if that person's going to stick around for 12 months or if she or he is going to be frustrated 6 weeks in because she's not training the way she wants to do, and which is totally fine, right? There's a time and place for everything. And maybe it's not the right timing. Maybe she needs to experience that for 3 years. Maybe she needs to get injured, hopefully minor injury, to come back and be like, okay, let's try your approach, right? So I think that's also a lot of work on our side to present it to people accordingly, right?
Yeah, totally.
I don't want to take up too much of your time because we're already 90 minutes in, almost 75, which is great. I love good conversations. I have 2 final questions. So the first one is, and be as open as you want and you can about it, is what would help you the most as a gym owner and coach? What are you missing, right? In terms of, could be practical application, could be ideas, could be workouts, could be, I don't know, I need 10 more coaches, could be I need a bigger facility. So if you had one wish from the good fairy, if you had one wish, what would that be?
I think at this time, because I did, you sent me a few of the sort of questions through, so I've been thinking about those. And I think because our gym, we're just different, and I think a lot of the gyms like yours and the gyms around the world that question things a bit more. I think the most difficult thing is finding people, be it other coaches who are on the same page, that your pool is smaller. Mm-hmm. You've got a smaller pool, and I've always said we've got plenty of CrossFit gyms around the area and I'm pretty much friends with all of them. Is when you're selling something like that, there's a tangible thing to sell. It's a name, it's a brand, there's videos, all that. You're selling this thing. So it's an easier sell. What we're trying to sell or we're trying to do to help people is more difficult. There's more nuances. There's more, because people would look at our gym and think, well, you do less than them, and we do. We don't tend to do the Olympic lifts anymore. Mm-hmm. We do the power versions, but we don't do the Olympic lifts. We just don't think it just doesn't suit like us as coaches, our group, our environment. Nothing wrong with them at all. They're incredible things. We just don't do it. We don't have an open gym policy. We took that out about 2 or 3 years ago. So just like you said, it's if someone's, and I've turned numerous people from our gym for that exact reason. If they're like, oh yeah, I really want to learn the Olympic lifts and I'm looking into competing in CrossFit competitions, I'm like, brilliant. That's just not what we do. Try this gym or try this gym down the road because they're great at it. I've sent numerous people to other gyms because I know it'll suit them better. Mm-hmm. So I think having the ability to hopefully attract more people, be it coaches, be it members, and I think that's entirely down to us as owners to put that out there. And I think maybe since the lockdown, there's a difficulty of like trying to sell what you do during lockdown when people are all training from home. We still want people to be able to train from home. Like we've got a saying at our gym that it's not about the gym. It's not about the 4 walls of the gym. You should be able to do what we do almost anywhere. But we also don't want to be the gym that just then is looked at as a simple, easy gym, because we're not. The stuff we do is simple, but not easy. But also we don't want to simplify it to the point that it looks so simple that nobody wants to. It doesn't look exciting enough, or it doesn't look fun enough to want to come to. So I think for me, it's honing that message, it's getting that message right to reach the right people to then draw those people into you, because we all want to be in a tribe. We all want to be with those people that get us. We get them, they get us. And if myself or any of the coaches felt like that wasn't quite right, or the members felt that wasn't quite right, then that's not that it feels like that, but I think my mind always thinks of not worst case scenario, or it's all more like, how can we do this better?
Mm-hmm.
How can we do this better? How can we make it better for us as coaches, for us as business owners, and for our members as well? So we've always got that as our kind of one of our overriding principles.
So your wish would be, how can you transport that message more broadly or easier, or more people get kind of the glimpse of what training should be about, like those boutique gym style training? Is that what you're looking for?
Yeah, and I think a combination of that, and also maybe another wish would be for individuals who are looking for a gym to look at gyms and question more.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if people need to ask more questions, and they need to be confident enough to ask more questions. You know, if someone comes to us for a chat, or, you know, I've seen your gym, yeah, come in for a chat. I want them to ask all the questions. You know, I'll have some questions for them, but I need to learn about that person as much as they want to learn about the gym. And I want them to come in with questions. That I deal so much better when people ask me things. You know, all the stuff I've learned over the last 13, 14 years. And I was going to bring this up with you. Every single thing we know, everything you know, everything I know is all available for free on the internet.
Mm-hmm. If
you look for it, you know, so it's almost information overload. There's too much information out there. Information is useless unless you actually do something with it, unless you can utilize that information. Otherwise, it's just words. It's just words and sketches and drawings and techniques and systems on bits of paper. So I think, yeah, it's such a broad question. I think it's something that I'll be asking myself probably for the rest of my time doing this. You know, and I don't think there's any particular answer, because my answer next month might be different.
Mm-hmm.
My answer the month after that might be different. But yes, that's a tricky one. That's a tricky one.
Yeah.
If I come up with something better, I'll send you a message.
It's a tough one, because I think like those kind of changes, like in the perception of a service provided, which is our style of training, depend in comparison to like the mass fitness style. Like A, it takes a lot of time. B, it takes a lot of content being put out there, like just constant education, constantly talking about stuff, and just growing it from the inside out, basically, right? So platforms like this, like podcasts and workshops, and more people are starting to kind of realize, okay, so I've had this in the back of my head. I had those questions as a coach, because I see that my CrossFit gym, whatever, deadlifting class is not improving. Yes, some are PRing, some are getting worse. So I know there's a problem, but I can't find the answer yet. So going out there and doing videos or PDFs or whatever it is, like I think any step towards education is gonna slowly start, maybe not flipping the script, but maybe like helping people to think about training differently than they're doing now, than just burning calories. See it more as not as an appointment, but it's like, how do you want to structure your day? That depends on how you need to train, how you train at night, how you train in the morning. So there's so much more to training to have a very good day than just, okay, I've done a workout and I finished in 29 minutes and 15 seconds.
Yeah.
And that's why I want to contribute with my workshops and just talking about it and showing practical applications and just giving, maybe even if it's just a little bit of confidence, like there's somebody out there that thinks kind of similar than I do. So it's awesome. So it's already 2 of us, and then it's 3 of us, and then it's 4 of us. And all of a sudden it's like 1 gym in every country, and then it's 2 gyms in every country. So slowly building that thingy and teaching coaches very precisely and very structured how to approach it at first. And once you found that confidence in that first year of learning or 2, then you can do your own thing. Like open up your own gym and be like, okay, I'm more into, I don't know, I'm a runner, but I'll use the principles and I'll do a running gym and I'll do a strongman gym and I'll do a CrossFit gym using those principles, which is totally fine, right? So that's what I want to contribute, and I hope it's going to work. But again, it's going to be one at a time, good conversations, and just offering practical stuff where people are having questions in the back of their heads.
Yeah. I think putting stuff out there that lends itself to more questions, because people constantly looking for they want an answer.
Yeah.
They just want an answer. How can I fix this? Why can't I feel this? What do I need to do? It's like there's not always an answer to that.
Yeah.
It takes practice, it takes practice, it takes frustration, it takes all these things, and that's just part of it. I mean, that's like when I learned skateboarding, was one of the most frustrating things in the world. Yeah. You've got a set of steps, you're trying to ollie down it, you fail 100 times, then you do it once and it's the best thing ever, and then you can't do it again. It's the most inconsistent. Well, actually the kids now are pretty amazing, but back when I was doing it in the late 80s going into the 90s, you would go out some days and not make one trick, but that was kind of that was the point. But you get close and you get a little bit closer, you get a little bit closer.
I think we need to relearn that frustration again, because we think of frustration as a bad thing. It's like, oh no, it's not working. This feels shitty, so I'm not going to try it again. It's like, talk to anybody that's pretty competent at any stuff. Like, it takes years to perfect it. And I think nowadays, my biggest issue with the fitness industry, they're presenting everything in like, okay, you can get a six-pack in 6 weeks, which is probably right at some point. But is it worth it to kind of wear your body down for 6 weeks so you have a six-pack? If that's your like lifetime goal, like, I'm all for it. Do it. But it's too fast. It's too easy. It's not like, it's so frustrating. Like, we've done like hundreds of coaching sessions, hundreds of hours of training. And probably like, I would say 75% of them are pretty frustrating. But that doesn't mean it's not a good training session. It's like that's part of the process. Like, okay, for me, that this is really scientific work. Like, you have an hypothesis, which means, okay, we're going to activate that muscle using that exercise and going to implement it in there. And you're going to fail the first 9 times, and then the 10th is going to work. It's like, awesome. So it's working for me. Now, how can I make that same thing work for my 5 coaches? How can I make those 5 coaches make it work for 150 members? How can I step out of the gym? And now you know the process. And most people don't want to do it.
No, I really like that. But we need to do a hashtag get frustrated, hashtag be frustrated, because that's when you might be on the verge of getting it. But like you said, if you get frustrated and then not do it again, then you won't get it. Like, that whole thing of just try it again.
Yeah, you should be so
annoyed, get angry,
you should be so pissed about yourself. If you really want it, you're gonna go back to it. If not, okay, maybe it's not your thing. But if you're looking for your thing for like 60, 70 years, maybe you're not like persistent enough, right? And we have to take a step back and be like, okay, maybe it's on me as well at some point. It's not, everybody else around me is not giving me enough progress and not giving me enough opportunities. It's like, yeah, maybe, but at some point it's like, okay, you got to put the work in. Like, I have kids, like a 10-year-old, and he got so frustrated yesterday about playing the piano, right? Like, he threw himself on the floor because his left hand is not working as his right hand, and he started screaming and he cried, obviously. And I encouraged him. It's like, okay, this is a situation that you can thrive on right now. I know it feels shitty, right? Because it's frustrating, but that's the energy you're spending. It's perfectly fine. Of course, he didn't understand it, right? Because he's 10. But encouraging people in those situations, like, I'm fucking frustrated right now. It's like, I get it. Give yourself 5 minutes of self-pityness and come back the next day and work again on it. And once you've achieved that, it's your achievement. It's not mine. Like, you've done it. And I think so many people are missing that feeling of, it's my accomplishment. It's my work that I put in. Right?
It means so much more that way. It means so much more to them, because there's nothing better than when somebody in the gym does something thing, be it a movement, be it whatever it is, and they're so pleased with it that they come and tell you or tell someone else. And it's, you know, it's that immediate. I'm not talking about necessarily your first muscle up and everyone's there clapping and cheering, which is still amazing. I'm talking about someone's just in the corner, or they may be doing a workout. And then I'd one recently where a guy we work with just had trouble finding his hamstrings and came into the gym the next day. And the first thing he said to me was, he said, my hamstrings hurt this morning. You know, like he was chuffed about it because he'd done it. You know, whatever he'd done to find them, and his eyes were wide and he was smiling. And I was like, amazing, brilliant. You know, that's what it should be, is people become so chuffed through their frustrations that they want to share it, you know, share it with other people. And I think that's one of the best things I learned through my years of skateboarding is you build that resilience. You know, every time you go out on your board, you're probably going to fail 90% of the things you try, but that doesn't matter. That's part of it. You get a little bit closer, and then when you do make it, it's the best thing ever. Then you might not make it again, and then you're going to injure yourself at some point. Then what do you do when you're injured? You're going to come back better. You're going to come back stronger. You know, and that's one of the best things that it taught me was just, I think, physical and mental resilience.
Yeah, that,
you know, call it being stubborn, whatever, but that just refusing to back down and go, no, I can't do this. Like,
I think that process of change, or that whether it's changing habits or changing yourself or whatever it is, I think that should be talked about more, because we think it's okay. I have an idea, I want to achieve this, and 6 weeks later I have it, and I put some work in, but I don't want to feel uncomfortable or frustrated in that process. There's a very smart neuroscientist, Idriss Abakane, I think he's French. He described the process, which means every change starts with the thing itself or the process itself being ridiculous, right? So let's call it, I don't know, everything. Here's a ridiculous thing. Gym owners are trying to teach a hinge differently, right? Because it's in the books, like this is how you teach the deadlift and the straight back and you push the knees, whatever, it's in a textbook, right? So the first we're starting to teach differently, like it's totally ridiculous. Like people laugh at us and be like, what the fuck? Like this is not how it's being done. This is not scientific. This is not in the books. We've been doing this for 25,000 years. And why are you actually questioning it? The second stage is it gets perceived as dangerous. So first it's ridiculous, then it's dangerous because, oh man, you're running your backs, you're doing stiff leg deadlifts, you're going to pop all those spines in your gym. And the last step of the process is becoming self-evident. But you have to run through these 3 steps. There's no way around it. When, I don't know, there's every monumental change, whether it's in companies with Apple inventing the iPod or the iPhone, like it always went through the same stages. Like people didn't like the iPods at first. Like people were like, what the fuck? Like I have CDs. I don't need that thingy with, like, it's ridiculous. And then a lot of people got scared, and then it got dangerous. And now it's like self-evident for everybody, right? Mm-hmm. And that's the same process we're going to run through. And hopefully I'm already in the dangerous zone, because I get a lot of text messages and calls will be like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, you're ruining people and physios don't like me. It's like, okay, awesome. I'm in stage 2 already. So it matters for some people. That's good. So I've left the ridiculous part and now I'm in the dangerous part. So it takes another 3 to 5 years, and then maybe I'll be in the self-evident one, which is great.
Yeah. Because I think every good coach constantly questions themselves occasionally. Is this right? Should I be doing this? Is this the right thing? You know, and if you're not doing that, if you don't at some point in your career of being a coach question yourself, you know, imposter syndrome, and I'd argue everybody on the planet has imposter syndrome, no matter how good you are at something, you will have it at some point. I'm probably having it more now than I have in the last 10 years, but thinking of what you just said then, that's probably because I'm now questioning everything I've done for the last 10 to 12 years and trying to work out now, is it the best thing to do? Or the way I've done things for that long, is this the best thing to do? Or is there more to this? And I'm more veering towards that now. And I'm probably, it's strange, I'm probably more confident now than I have been in my coaching. And at the same time, probably got a little bit more imposter syndrome because it's different.
Yeah. because
so it's that balance.
that's perfect, because you're constantly putting yourself in that change loop, right? Where most people don't even want to enter, right? Because it's uncomfortable, right? Because after 10 years of coaching, you still feel like a baby because you're not staying where you started, which is totally fine. So whenever people ask me like, why are you doing this? It's like, okay, you need certain principles. So I always tell them I have very, very strict principles in terms of coaching and all that stuff, but they're tied together loosely. So we gotta stay open minded. It's like, okay, maybe there's a better idea coming up, and I'm gonna test it. I'm gonna test it for a year, and if it works, I'm always gonna run through the same process. I'm gonna test it on me, gonna test it on the coaches. I'm gonna test it on 150 people in my gym, and then bring it out to the world. It's like, okay, it seems like it's a better idea. I'll do it.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people are just. I mean, it probably is because of fear, because they're afraid what other people are going to say about them for doing it, and as long as there's the response, I'll never respond with anger. I'll never, and that's one thing I learned through the breathing with the Brian McKenzie stuff is don't react to things, respond to them. And through those simple, breathing through your nose 3 to 5 times before you respond to anything gives you that window to stop reacting emotionally, prevent yourself from reacting emotionally, and decide if you still want to react with emotions. At least you've given your brain the chance. Yes, it's the right thing to do, but just to respond. The amount of times you see coaches like lambasted online, you're doing this wrong, blah blah blah. It's like, well, that's not getting anyone anywhere. Yep. Let's have a conversation rather than just a post. Let's have a conversation about it. A perfect example is what happened recently in the Oscars with Will Smith and Chris Rock. I still don't. Was it fake? I don't know. God, I don't really care, to be honest. But it sets a precedent for other. If I was a comedian now, a live stand-up comedian, I'd be concerned because it's like, is this going to open the door now for other people to feel okay to do that? That's one of the downsides. But should he have just had a conversation with Chris Rock, be it personal or be it online? More than likely. Is it something he should have done if it was true? Probably not, because it's a reaction. It's, that was just an example because it's what's happened recently, but that's a perfect example of what your emotions could do in the wrong situation. If you just react emotionally to everything, then that's never going to end well.
I think it was totally fake. That's my personal opinion, right?
Yeah.
Because if you look in slow-mo, like that's a movie hit. That's a movie slap. 100%, and all of a sudden Chris Rock sold out all his concerts or his gigs, like for the next 250 years. But so I think it was staged. Whatever. I think if somebody approaches my wife in a bar and is even trying to hit her for whatever reason, like, I'm not gonna think for 1 second, like, I'm just gonna punch the guy in the face. Like, there's no way around it, right? With talking, like, okay, I like a little bit of bro talk and like talking shit. That's totally fine. I get it. And you gotta be able to take some shit if you talk shit, right? You know what I mean?
Okay.
But that's a different story. I think it was totally staged.
Like I said, I don't really pay attention to all the celebrity stuff, to be honest, like ever, because it blows my mind that people are interested in it. To be honest, they're interested in people they don't know, in a life they haven't got. I think it's a lot of people just feel that's what they want.
Yeah,
and you can just see the amount of celebrities, famous people who are chronically depressed, chronic anxiety, because it's a hell of a thing to have to do, just have your face on TV and screen, and anybody can, and that's one of the problems with the internet and online, is anybody can say anything to anyone at any point. We've never had that before in history.
And I totally think this is good. I'm not saying it always feels good, but everybody should be able to express their opinions. If I like it or not, doesn't matter. Like, everybody needs to have the opportunity to say whatever they want.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing with opinions, is you can't get angry at someone's opinion because it's an opinion. It's difficult. But I don't spend an awful lot of time on social media and stuff these days. I'll post what I post, but I try not to scroll and all that sort of stuff, because it's the algorithms don't give you the true picture anyway. I need to search for it rather than be shown what the algorithm thinks I want to look at. I want to be the one who decides what I look at. You know, I'm not a conspiracy theorist necessarily by any stretch, but I do understand that social media is constructed in a very specific way for us to see what they want us to see.
We just have not. Yeah, we have not learned how to deal with it. I mean,
no.
At the end of the day, you can still delete that app. And I know it sounds weird, right? But nobody forced you to open up Facebook or Instagram. I get it. You want to participate in it, but still, you don't have to do it. Like, nobody's forcing you. You can always delete that app or use it. You post. Don't read comments. Just post to get out the message, to educate people, and that's it.
Yeah, because it's at the end of the day, like in the gym, it's just a tool.
Yeah,
that's all it is. Yeah, it's a whole other conversation about that sort of stuff. Isn't
it? And I feel like we should have another conversation because a lot of stuff to talk about. Well, thank you very much for taking the time, Dan. Really appreciate it.
Pleasure. I was really glad when you messaged me. But yeah, I mean, I love talking about this sort of stuff, especially. I mean, not just with people who are on the same page as well, because it's you don't grow so much when you're only creating that echo chamber of everyone agreeing with each other all the time. You know, I'm just getting more comfortable and confident with talking to other people who don't necessarily agree with what I do. And that's fine, as long as they're open for a conversation. I'll talk all day about this sort of stuff, and not just about stuff in the gym, about life in general and everything else, because life doesn't just happen in the gym. That's a place where we get a little magnifying glass. It's
a bubble, like celebrity. Being a celebrity is a bubble. It's like it's an echo chamber. It's a nice one if we design it properly, so to speak. How can people find more about you? Like, what's your Instagram handle? What's your social media website?
Instagram. I got my gym is Outcast Swansea, at Outcast Swansea. I've got two other Instagrams. At Bagwad is where I post the sandbag workouts. I try and do it daily. Sometimes I miss a day now and again. I just try and put stuff out there. And I try and put out, it's not just a workout. I try and post what the workout's for, you know, sort of stimulus rather than just here's a workout. I want it to be a bit more than that. And then my other one is at the Anti-Fragile Movement, which I started just after lockdown. And I started that really because I feel fragile, you know, and after reading the book Anti-Fragile, I like the premise of it's not just about getting stronger and being more resilient. It's about consistently getting better. You know, using like water and rock as an example. Water constantly flows. If a stone gets in the way, it works a way around it, but it keeps going. It doesn't just hit that rock and stop. It keeps moving. So, you know, over my lifetime, through training, through skateboarding, through the anxiety issues I've had, came to the point where I thought, actually, I feel quite fragile. So what can I do about that? So it's not about never breaking. It's about, if you do break, can you then become stronger after that? What do you do from that? So that's what I try and do through that. That's more of my movement and my one-to-one sessions is through that. But you know, follow. If I post something you think is nonsense, please message me and tell me, or again have a conversation. You know, that's the more we can talk to others about this, the better everybody's going to be. Because at the end of the day, all of us big coaches want to help people.
Absolutely.
And at the end of the day, if we can be better at helping people, surely that's a win-win for everybody.
Yeah. All right, man. So thanks again for taking the time. Maybe we'll meet in person someday. Who knows? I've never been to Wales, I got to admit. I've been to the UK a couple of times, but not Wales yet. So maybe we'll meet in person someday.
Well, you're always welcome. Always very, very welcome here in Swansea. We got the beaches. We get sun now and again. I think it's quite similar to the weather you get over there, to be honest.
Yeah, that's
grey and wet most of the time, but we do get the sun now and again.
Awesome, man. So thanks again for taking the time.
No, and thank you for asking. I've been following your stuff for a long time now, and I've learned a fair bit off you.
Thank you very much.
I'll keep following.
All right, man.
One day, hopefully.
Take care, and we'll have another conversation soon, I guess.
Definitely.
Take care. Bye-bye.
See you soon, Greg.
Bye.